Um, I don't hate this movie, as I said before. I think for a, I think, despite my and maybe even in line with my earlier assertions that it was natural and good that Universal
Well,
decided to do what they did here because it worked with Disney for the longest time. Um, but here's the thing, because I remember Petrich Farm remembers, but I remember Robert Winfrey of the Screaming Boy podcast
just had
when
to
we
do it.
when we discussed Cinderella, Aladdin, Lion King, Beauty and the Beast at all. We talked about if you're going to do one of these live action remakes, you have to do something, you have to bring something to the table that makes the exercise worthwhile. Do something with the aesthetic, add to the backstory in some way, flesh out the main story, build sets, create stunt pieces that at the time could have only been done in animation and can now be fully realized in real life to create the magic that was once Hollywood. And Beauty and the Beast largely did that.
Hmm.
Cinderella absolutely did that.
I,
Aladdin did some
I, th-
interesting things.
well, the only interesting thing Aladdin did was like flesh out elements of the genie's power and how it interacts with the world,
Yeah.
which
And
I
then,
actually, but then, yep, I think the more I've thought about this, and I've given this some thought, like, why did Cinderella work? What was it about that movie that none of the subsequent ones have been able to match quality wise? And I've arrived at a couple of conclusions. One, you had the right creative people behind it because that's directed by Kenneth Branagh, who is a serious Shakespearean actor and a very talented director. So he gets the drama. But two, if you rewatch the original animated Cinderella, boy, is that like that script is about that thin.
yeah, I have made all of those points before, and we'll make them again, but only as a TikTok done by AI video.
Yeah, they had to find things to do, and the problem starts to come in when you don't have to, when you can be lazy about it. Is or counterpoint, you get the wrong people involved. Like, boy, we're gonna make a Dumbo movie. Who should do this? I know, Tim Burton.
So, where I was going with this was this movie didn't do that. This movie
No,
just did a shot for shot remake
yeah,
of the
pretty much.
cartoon and brought nothing else to this. As a matter of fact, in all actuality, this is more Lion King than it is Cinderella or Beauty and the Beast in the sense that by doing a live action version of it, you actually accentuated its flaws. For example,
Yeah,
Astrid works in the cartoon because in the cartoon you can have a gangly girl because you're doing something to the effect of a um, stylized art.
yeah,
These characters are not drawn human like, they are drawn stylized. So when she's gangly and spindly, but you're telling me she's the biggest, baddest Viking warrior this side of the Pecos, I'll believe you. I'm watching a fantasy. And then in real life, I'm watching this skinny ass girl pick up an axe, which looks like it's heavier than she is, and waving it at a dragon, and I'm laughing. And when she's running after Hiccup, I'm like, ha, you run like a girl. And it's like, and I kept doing this throughout the movie. I was like, this is just reminding me that the cartoon, like, made sense to do it this way. And it
yeah.
doesn't, like, that's the thing. If you bring me a script and you're like, it's Valerian, the city of 1,000 planets, and I'm looking at this going, if I do it live action, it's going to cost me this much money. It's going to look like this. It's going to be these limitations. If we do it as an animated feature, it'll look this way, that way, and it'll cost me that much. Which which is more cost effective and which will turn out a better product? If you bring me Reservoir Dogs, and I run the same calculus, I don't make the same decision unless I'm doing a lot of drugs. So I'm watching this
So that's
movie,
your George Lucas.
and again CGI'd Mr. Orange bleeding everywhere. But I'm watching this and I'm like, this world doesn't feel magical in the way that the cartoon world did,
Not at
because
all.
it's not. You're trying to convince me this is a real place, but like I said during our intro, everything about this place seems as unreal as humanly possible. It seems as, fake as a $4 bill. This makes none of this makes sense. I mean, like, I was making jokes about it because dare I fucking actually scrutinize this movie in front of my kid, but I couldn't get away from it. Did I hate the movie for that reason? No, but we're looking at the movie from a couple of different angles, and one of the angles I looked at it is I was never not reminded this is fake as bullshit. I was never not reminded this is a imitation of the cartoon. So in that sense, it fails, and in that sense, it's as good as The Lion King and sufficiently worse than Cinderella or Beauty and the Beast. This may have been my problem with the original cartoon. I don't know. I haven't watched the cartoon in a while, and I had to ask one of my kids. But I walked away from this movie, and that's the only thing I can really talk about right now, with a profound sense of, so the movie can happen. Everybody in this movie has to be incredibly stupid in order for the plot to move forward. And if anyone has a modicum of forethought before the time to have forethought comes, and he was like, but what if they had been on an arc? Don't you understand? No. They have forethought when the script tells them they have to, not because of anything that led to it. And that, again, may have been a problem with the cartoon, but since I don't remember the cartoon all that well, I assume it's probably the same. But I had a hard time staying involved in this movie, watching this many people make this many stupid decisions. The kid playing Hiccup is good for what they asked him to do. I think he's got a nice face. I think he does a good job in this role. I'll be curious to see what he does next. Outside of that, other than the known actors, nobody else in here, they were doing their best impressions of the voice work in the cartoon, and that's about it. But it also reminded me how much more believable it was in the cartoon than when I saw. There's been since the advent of VO, there've been a lot of AI videos on TikTok as of late, and one of them has been a fat, pink-haired, septum-pierced lesbian, as near as I could tell, doing police training, and and complaining about the amount of physical work it takes to be a cop, and that's all I could think about when watching the kids. Because again, my mind accepted it when it was a cartoon.
But when you have to look at the fat kid from Deadpool 2.
Yeah, when I look at the kid who has the body developments of the body shape of a volcano.
If I may quote Scott Steiner,
he's fat.
There we go.
But the fat redheaded chick wasn't much better.
Nope.
You people would have been dead. That's the thing. You're asking me to participate and fully engage with a world that is constantly being besieged by dragons. Who are the dragons going to pick off first? The Infernal?
As the old saying goes, you don't have to outrun the bear, you have to outrun the guy next to you.
Right. So all that would be left would be like the fittest and the fastest, not the fattest and the dumbest. They would go first. I'll accept it as a cartoon. I won't accept it in real life. It's a major problem. It's a major failing of this movie.
When they made this movie, they did not sit down and actually look at how do we adjust stuff that works in an animated film
Yeah.
versus stuff that works in real life.
That's what I'm saying. This is more Lion King than Beauty and the Beast because Lion King was like, oh, we'll just do photorealistic animals and it'll look the same, except that guess what? Photorealistic lions don't emote.
Yeah.
It doesn't do. I just can't wait to be king.
Yeah, you don't do the
You
jazz
know.
hands.
Right. The lion's just going. I just can't wait to be king.
You can't get the goose stepping hyenas.
No, you can't do any of those things. So this movie, it was Lizard Brain. This was produced, written, directed, and acted by Lizard Brain. And I got through it well enough, and I walked out of it, and I told the kids I liked it because I was this. Here's the thing: the emotional beats still work.
Yeah, like this movie you only really struggle with this movie if you really think about it. And
watching Hiccup bond with Toothless still works because for the same reason the Mandalorian bonding with Grogu worked, for the same reason every time we do A Boy and His Dog works.
Yeah.
Because there's something about a dog's eyes and a boy's being that, still speaks to us on a very human, very basic level. So watching Hiccup do dog stuff, watching rather Toothless do dog stuff, and watching him bond with Hiccup and Hiccup, find his voice, find his courage, find his true self through bonding with this dog was all very nice stuff. The things that this movie says about the relationship, the strained relationship, of which I know nothing about, between a father and his son.
Oh, you haven't been on both sides.
Not at all. To have lived the life of a son who perpetually disappoints his father and being reminded of it on an ongoing basis, I was, touched by this movie more than once, and definitely more so in the second half than in the first. The first, I was shaking my head a lot. But I think the emotional beats still work. I think if anything saves this movie, other than your emotional attachment to the source material, and by that I mean the cartoon, not the book.
Yeah.
It's that the emotional beats all are as resonant now as they were when the cartoon came out. And A Boy and His Dog never gets old. So that's it. I'm glad the movie's doing well. I don't want to see movies fail. I'm glad people are enjoying it and it brought joy to people. I haven't heard anything like post Lilo and Stitch. My TikTok wasn't filled with a lot of the kind of Ohana means leave your family behind kind of bullshit.
Oh, did you see the director come out and try to defend the ending?
Yes, I don't care. My point is I haven't seen that kind of visceral reaction to this, so I hope it does well. It's got a Pixar movie up next. And then
that is not trending. That you seen the tracking on that? I mean, we'll talk about it in a little bit, but
I actually haven't. I've been very immersed in what's going on with Superman and the Fantastic Four.
Okay, so Elio at the moment is tracking to like a 30 million opening weekend.
Ouch. Anyway, your thoughts on How to Train Your Dragon?
This is kind of a case study in rushing an animated movie to live action and not understanding how certain things work in one medium versus the other. Your characterization being done via silhouette in animated stuff, that carries a lot of work. Like the way you design a character when you can just design them any way you want says a lot about the character and will carry a lot of the weight for you. You don't get that as much with people. There's also dialogue beats and performance notes that work in animation because it's animated. So when you have the comically overconfident guy who's also a little bit shorter than everyone and is clearly overcompensating, you can do things with the animation and with the performance that cue us into, oh, I know you. I know what kind of character you are. Those same traits in a live human don't read the same way. Right? Bugs Bunny, if it's just a dude, ain't funny. It's an exaggerated example, but hopefully you take the point. You have to do different amounts of work to overcome that when this is what we're dealing with. And I don't think they adequately cleared that hurdle. I do want to say some positive things because, like you, I'm not mad at this movie. Like, I might have sort of philosophical objections to it because if this is all you're going to do, just re-release the original and everyone, hey, it's 15 years since the first one came out. Here it is again. Make a big push. People will go see it. You won't have to spend as much money as you did on this one, but that's a philosophical objection, and it's not entirely. It's fair to discuss, but I can only hold it against the movie so much. Astrid's a bit of a struggle for me because, again, the character design does a lot of the heavy lifting for her. The cartoon world does a lot of lifting to help make that character believable. And there's stuff you can do with cartoon animated features that are really, really hard to pull off in a human. So she just kind of comes across as insufferable more than somewhat. You root for her a lot more in the animated movie. Like, she's still a little bit of a, like, the character's kind of the same, but there's a lot of little things that you can do with an animated movie that make up ground that you have to do differently in live action.
So we're getting comments from people.
All
I'm
right.
gonna put this one on here because I don't know how to handle it.
Do you want to?
Is it? Yeah. Is that what we're doing?
Sure.
Okay. Is that what
I
he wants?
believe so.
Is that what he likes? Is that how he likes it?
Go
Yeah.
for tell you what, buddy. If he did it right, comment again with a thumbs up. If you want him to try something different, spell it out phonetically.
I will interrupt Robert's review to take notes on how to appropriately. I mean, are we doing Howard Dean?
No one's doing how you, Mark, the only person on God's
Doing
green
Howard
earth.
Dean in the year of our Lord 2025 is this guy.
Mark, 10 years ago, you were still the only guy making Howard Dean references.
Hang on.
Howard Dean references stopped in 2005 after the election.
He said moaning tone. Yeah.
He might want the like the cop, the Chief Wiggum line.
Okay. All I can think about is the comic book guy right now, of which I've been compared to on TikTok. Oh, cheeseburgers and loneliness are a dangerous mix.
That's very true. No truer words have ever been spoken by comic book guy than cheeseburgers and loneliness are dangerous together.
High pitched femboy sound. Ugh.
Okay, he's just trying to get off now.
All right, continue.
Either that or he's building a sound collection to train an AI to make noises.
Like, for my podcast, we just have this one fat ass going making weird Howard Dean noises.
What he's doing is he's like going to turn it into an AI VTuber or something. That's probably what he's doing there.
All right.
Godspeed, man. I'm just razzing you. I'm not trying to say anything deliberately insulting. So, but to the same point, like, there's a bunch of stuff about the relationship between Hiccup and Stoic that gets conveyed physically in the animated movie.
Right.
There's a lot of the comedy that is physical because you do stuff with animated characters.
Actually, I wanted to mention this before, but it plays to your point that you're saying. So Hiccup is the only thing that still looks animated in this whole movie. Hiccup still looks very cartoony.
A little
bit.
He
looks very animated, and I do that, and I say that because the rest of the dragons still have an earthy, scaly. They look like real dragons,
sort of
dragons feel. To the point that my kids pointed this out, they liked the monster dragon, the queen bee dragon, better in the live action than they did in the cartoon. They felt that because it looked real, it looked visceral, it looked tangible, it had greater menace than the cartoon one did, which I think is an interesting point. It kind of makes your point for you. But like I said, Hiccup still feels a little Roger Rabbit-y to me. I keep saying Hiccup. I mean melatonin. Go on.
So the point being, like, you just lose something in translation when, like, the scene in the animated movie when Stoic and Hiccup try to have a conversation,
Hmm.
like now we finally got something to talk about. They just look at each other in silence because no, they don't. Like that's funny in the animated movie because of some of the stuff they do physically. Like the
Right.
eyes shift back and forth, and there's some fingers. Oh boy, what are we doing? Like we're not quite like you, but
Hmm.
there's a physical component to it that you can't do in real life because in real life if you behave like that with real people it just looks wrong. And so again you just lose some stuff like that in translation when you're going from one of these to the other. But
Hiccup, why are you behaving this way? Oh, I had a stroke.
I'd be in real trouble if I wasn't this close to being a cartoon character. One of my favorite Ernest lines, by the way, is that one. But let me say a few positive things. So the dragons look good. They had to make a choice. Like, do we make them more cartoony? Do we make them a little bit more realistic? And because we're not trying to do Who Framed Roger Rabbit here, they went with something more believable. But they all look good. Most of the interactions are fine. There's a couple that look janky, but for the most part, they look pretty good. The flying sequences bothered me because it felt they couldn't keep the camera still. And I'd rather get a sense of wonder and majesty from like scope and perspective than from rapid cuts and
That's
fast
why my
movement.
son said they're going to take the same footage and just repurpose it for the amusement park ride.
He's probably right, for the record, about that. About that sequence in particular, he's almost certainly correct. I did not see this in 3D.
Just keep going.
So I didn't see it in 3D, but there's stuff you can tell when it's supposed to be played in 3D and others that it doesn't seem to matter. There's a few janky bits. Like a couple of the times when there's a scene where like Stoic's supposed to headbutt a dragon into submission,
Hmm.
which is really cool in the animated movie, and in the live action doesn't quite play because you can't get the angle right because it's a real person and not a real thing. And it just doesn't quite land.
Yeah.
But positive. So dragons look pretty good. Hang
I
on.
keep drifting negative, damn it.
I do, and I'm trying not to. The music is pretty good. Yeah, the main theme
My
is just the
kids' comment
same.
on that was they kept hitting the same goddamn song. It was like Wonder Woman, like that comment. Like every time she does
Mm,
anything in the Zack Snyder movies, every time they play the same Wonder Woman theme. Wonder
yeah,
Woman's taking a piss, they have to hear, nah, 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 They were like because I did a TikTok of the movie poster with my kids in front of it after we'd seen the movie because I didn't have
yeah.
time before that. And my son was like, if I have to hear that goddamn song one more time, they played it every 5 minutes.
It's a bit that's slightly exaggerated, but I understand his point.
Yeah.
They do lean into the main theme a little heavily. As you mentioned, the acting is all acceptable. Like there's
Yeah.
nothing here that's bad. um, I said I think the only downgrade here, like legitimate downgrade, and I hate to say it about Nick Frost, but in the animated movie, Craig Ferguson voices that same character. And Craig Ferguson just brings a boatload of personality to that kind of thing.
So when the movie was over, people in my theater, there was a fair amount, it wasn't full. It was on a Sunday afternoon. People in my theater clapped and cheered.
Yeah.
I don't care. Here's what I care about. My son pulls my shirt and he goes, "Roses, Robert Winfrey. They'll throw roses at the screen."
Yeah.
I can't believe I my kid has now picked that up as like a reference.
He could be making worse references.
Yeah.
I liked the final battle that we had with the queen dragon. I think that worked okay.
It was weird that Hiccup said, "Get away from her, you bitch." I thought that was odd.
Odder that they didn't censor it, but But I thought that worked pretty well. So I'm kind of with you. Like, I'm not mad at this movie on its own terms. It's fine. It's not great, but it's not, awful. And I'm more annoyed at the circumstances that led to this movie. And I've definitely got a handful of craft issues, but like you said, the emotional beats still mostly land. The music's fine. There's things that needed to be smoothed out that weren't for whatever reason. But this is hardly the worst thing I've seen all year.
No,
Not even close.
This is definitely not worse than the last two movies we saw. But
No.
for the first time, since I don't know what did I recently gushed over? Just a real quick review, because the last two things we both screamed into the wilderness, especially me.
We did Ballerina last
week. We both
week.
like Mission Impossible. We both like Final Destination. So
They're fine enough, yeah.
Yeah, we went. Thunderbolts was the worst show we've done all year, for a variety of reasons. But you weren't on Nana's. We both like Final Destination. So we had a 2-week run. We were doing okay. Then we had a 2-week run. We were not okay. We're back to okay again.
Yeah, and this is, on your 3-point scale, this is middle of the twos. This is dead average.
And our last thing that we're going to say before we move into the money tonight is POV. Your friend's a dragon, and you say, "Hey, instead of slaying the dragon, let's ride the dragon."
Okay, I don't know if you're making a sex reference or a drug reference, because you could go either way with that one.